All right, good afternoon. First of all, I want to welcome a group of 10 young Palestinian journalists who are here as part of the UN's training program for Palestinian journalists. They start their program today, so a good place to start. And you'll be with us, I understand, until the beginning of December, so welcome, and we hope to see you again. And after we're done here, Brendan Varma will brief on behalf of the President of the General Assembly. This morning, the Secretary General briefed the Security Council on the Sahel. He said that given the urgency of the situation in the region, there is a need for innovative actions in support of the G5 Sahel's efforts on the security front, but also on development and governance. Time is against us, he said, and we need to unite our efforts to address the root causes of instability in the region. He warned that not acting could have severe consequences for the region and beyond. The Secretary General added that the creation of the joint force demonstrates the will of the G5 Sahel countries to cooperate and address the threat together. We have the opportunity to support them and to reverse the course of events, he said. The Secretary General asked the Council to be ambitious in its choice. He said the strong political will of the G5 Sahel, as well as the material and operational support, are critical. However, he added that while security cooperation is essential, only a multidimensional response will put an end to instability in the region. Together, he said, the need to strengthen our action on governance, development, and resilience. The French Foreign Minister, Jean-Yves Le Drian, who's presiding over the Security Council session, is expected to go to the stakeout around 1 p.m. to speak to you. And from Iraq, our colleagues at the UN mission condemned today's killing of a journalist in Kirkuk, as well as an assault on a journalist in Erbil yesterday. The mission also spoke out against the intimidation and violence against members of the parliament of the Kurdistan region of Iraq and political offices throughout the Kurdistan region. The mission said that it appreciates the appeal by the Kurdistan Regional Government and the Kurdistan Regional Security Council for calm, as well as the Iraqi government's call for de-escalation and compliance with the law. The UN mission also takes note of the Iraqi federal authorities' decision to ban some broadcasts in Kurdistan region, adding that at times of crisis, a free media becomes even more essential to safeguard the public interests and protect democracy. It also stresses that hate speech and incitement to violence based on religion, race, and political affiliation have no place in a democracy. The mission has steadfastly called for the de-escalation between the federal government in Baghdad and the Kurdistan regional government in Erbil. You can read more on the mission's website. And from the humanitarian file, our colleagues on the ground tell us that civilians continue to flee clashes in Erbil, Nineveh, and Dohuk Governorate, with the UN Migration Agency saying that more than 182,000 people are currently displaced. Aid workers are closely monitoring the situation after the government of Iraq unilaterally declared a temporary suspension of military operations over the weekend. Humanitarian workers continue to provide assistance wherever access allows or is needed. And over the weekend, the UN's Emergency Relief Coordinator, Mark Lowcock, wrapped up a 5-day visit to Yemen, appealing for more funding and better humanitarian access to people in need, as well as for all the parties to respect international humanitarian law and protect civilians. He heard stories of atrocious suffering from hundreds of Yemenis throughout his mission, noting that it was shocking to see the terrible impact of this man-made conflict. He also met with government leaders, including the Prime Minister in Aden and those in positions of authority in Sana'a. In his meetings, Mr. Lowcock discussed the need to pay salaries to civil servants, to get Sana'a Airport reopened, and to improve the operations of ports, especially Hodeidah, and serious concerns about the environment in which the UN and other aid workers operate. The Emergency Relief Coordinator stressed the need to end the horrendous suffering in Yemen requires an end to the conflict, for which a political resolution to the crisis is needed. More information online. Excuse me. Mr. Lowcock is currently in Amman in Jordan, and he will brief the Security Council on the humanitarian situation in Syria at 3 p.m. this afternoon in an open meeting via video conference. And the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs tell us that the number of Rohingya refugees who have fled Myanmar and arrived in Bangladesh has reached 607,000. More than half of these refugees are staying in the Kutupalong expansion site, an area merging pre-existing makeshift settlements and adjacent land allocated by the government of Bangladesh. Aid workers continue to provide food, shelter, water, health care, and among other assistance. Despite the substantial scaling up of the humanitarian response, enormous gaps remain, primarily due to the lack of land, the growing scale of needs, and funding shortages and logistical constraints. The revised appeal for this crisis is currently 31% funded. The pledging conference last week raised $360 million, and donors are urged to disperse these funds as soon as possible. And the UN Relief and Works Agency, UNRWA, called over the weekend for full respect of the neutrality and inviolability of United Nations premises at all sites. It warned that any activities or conduct that put beneficiaries and staff alike at risk undermines the ability of UNRWA staff to provide assistance to Palestine refugees in safety and security must cease. On October 15th, UNRWA discovered the existence of what appeared to be a tunnel underneath one of its schools in Gaza. In accordance with the protocol, the agency has taken necessary measures immediately to render the school safe and has sealed the cavity underneath the premises. The school renewed its operations on the 25th of October. And the foreign ministers of Guyana and Venezuela met in New York over the weekend to discuss the border controversy between their two countries. The personal representative of the Secretary General, Dag Nylander, facilitated the discussions. The foreign ministers and their delegations exchanged views on issues related to the controversy with the aim of exploring options for full agreement for its resolution. They also reaffirmed their commitment to the good offices process. Couple of reports to flag. The UNICEF today warned that only a third of nearly 3,000 unaccompanied refugees and migrant children currently in Greece are receiving proper care and shelter. UNICEF says that 1,800 children are living in open sites, reception centers, and are stranded on the islands and in detention centers. Some of these children have been living on the street. With the approaching winter, this is an added risk. And lastly, and very importantly, the World Meteorological Organization today warned the concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere increased at record speed last year and hit a level not seen in 800,000 years. According to WMO's Greenhouse Gas Bulletin, globally average concentration of carbon dioxide reached 403.3 parts per million in 2016, up from 400 parts per million in 2015, because of a combination of human activity and a strong El Nino event. The report says these rapidly increasing atmospheric levels of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases have the potential to initiate unprecedented changes in climate systems, leading to severe ecological and economic disruptions. On that pleasant note, I will take your questions. Rami.
Thanks, Steph. The bodies of 36 men were found in El Abyar in Libya over the weekend. I'm wondering if the SG has a comment.
No, we're aware of these reports. We've asked our mission on the ground to see if they can give us any more information. Mr. Lee.
Sure. Thanks a lot. I wanted to ask, I've been asking Farhan last week, but now I'll ask you. About the visit of the Secretary General in Cameroon. Thanks for the short readout. It said it referred to the situation in the Anglophone areas, and there's a lot of interest in knowing what more. But there also, first I was suspect of it, but it seems that a photograph is on the webpage of the Cameroon presidency of the Secretary General receiving kind of a gold statuette or some kind of an award. And so I'm wondering, can you say anything about that?
No, I think it was it was not an award of any kind, as far as I'm aware. It was a traditional protocol gift. So,
okay. And I'd ask you, and maybe I understand you were busy and you were there, but Mr. Fall, is he still in the country? And how does he explain? There was an interview that he did that was put up on UN radio in which he said, in French, that there are, of course, some extremists trying to promote secessionism in the area. And obviously, the people that are there that think that they were somehow swindled by the decolonization in 1961. They don't think that the mere fact of calling for secession makes them an extremist, and it becomes dangerous because that's a word that's often interchanged with terrorism.
I haven't listened to a full interview. I don't think the special representative was painting everyone with that same brush. Mr. Fall, as far as I understand, has now left Cameroon. He was present with the Secretary General during the meeting with the President.
And also, to ask Farhan, maybe it's more comfortable to say it now. Between that meeting in Cameroon and today, where was the Secretary General?
In New York.
Okay.
Yeah, he came back Saturday, as I did.
Would have been nice.
Yeah.
All right. Chilling.
Sir.
Thank you, Steph. Although we have witnessed during the General Assembly that the Secretary General completely painted himself opposite to the US President Donald Trump on the issue of North Korea, that diplomacy was to be given a priority. And in the meantime, last week, we also witnessed the US Secretary of Defense saying that total denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula is the goal, even for the United States. I wonder whether what Secretary General placed himself now after these comments, would he like to add something or to propose his own initiative?
No, I mean, I think the Secretary General's position remains the same, which he has always, in the past few months, called for a de-escalation of the current tensions, a return to diplomacy. His position has not changed or evolved in that in that sense. Just in the terms of denuclearization, what is his position? I think the Secretary General is for denuclearization. Is of course stands for denuclearization. Olga.
Thank you, Stephane. There is a report that Kurdish leader Barzani would leave after November 1st. In this situation, do you think how will it affect the current situation on the ground, and who will UN communicate to?
Well, I mean, the UN's obviously on the national level. The UN communicates primarily with the national level in Baghdad, with Prime Minister Abadi. We'll continue to do that. We also, of course, have contacts with the Kurdistan regional government, and I think we have to wait to see who holds the office. We will continue to be in dialogue with the leadership in place in the Kurdistan region of Iraq. Mr. Lee.
Sure. I want to ask you a couple questions about the Democratic Republic of the Congo. One is, there's a report of a UN peacekeeper being killed, allegedly by another UN peacekeeper. And I wanted to know, if you can confirm that. And also, there have been at least one civilian killed in Goma in protests against the continued holdover presidency of Joseph Kabila. And is that something that MONUSCO is operating on?
Yes, I mean, I think they're monitoring the situation. I don't have any details as to exactly on the demonstration that took place in Goma. We are aware of the tragic incident that took place in the living quarters of a MONUSCO base in Sake, North Kivu, I think on October 27th, in which one UN peacekeeper was found dead and another injured. The wounded peacekeeper has been transferred to Kampala for further medical care. The mission is conducting an investigation currently.
And is this, I hate to say it, but if it does turn out to be I guess manslaughter or murder of one peacekeeper by another, does immunity still apply? Is it a matter of military justice in South Africa?
I think it's a matter of the contingent taking the decision, investigating, and obviously if there is foul play, for the person to face justice. Okay. Yeah, 1 second. Go ahead.
Thank you, Stephane. I want to ask, the results of the election rerun in Kenya are out today, and which has been boycotted by the opposition. And in 25 of constituencies, the elections were not held because it was too insecure and unsafe. This is obvious, a grey election result that is questionable. Does the UN recognize the government of Mr. Kenyatta and the government?
Look, it's not for the UN to recognize or not recognize the government. We're not in the business of doing that, especially with elections that we did not organize. Obviously, we're all following the situation extremely closely. We remain in contact with African Union colleagues as well. I think what's important is that now there is an open dialogue between the political actors in Kenya, and we would not want to see any rise in tension or any violence on the streets. Yes, sir.
Sure. Two more questions. One light and one heavy. So do you want to choose the order?
I'll take the heavy.
Heavy first? Okay. At least, I mean, there was in the third committee late last week, there was, during the presentation of the Commission of Inquiry on Burundi, in the Q&A afterwards, or the interactive session afterwards, the ambassador of Burundi, Albert Shinjiro, said, oh, the presumed genocide in Rwanda, and then some other stuff that he said was entirely, I guess, within the realm of acceptable advocacy. But many people have said this is basically genocide denial taking place in Conference Room 1 of the UN. And I wondered, is it something that the Secretary General or the DPI office in charge of commemorating the Rwanda genocide? It's on UN TV. You can find it. I'll send you the spot site to it. What is the reaction of the UN to this statement?
I mean,
in its Conference Room 1?
I haven't seen the particular remarks. As a matter of principle, we do not question the genocide that took place in Rwanda, and we will continue to commemorate, and we will continue to commemorate it appropriately.
Because Mr. Shinjiro is one of his sort of profile pictures, him and the Secretary General. That's one of the reasons.
Well, I mean, it's most of the ambassadors. I mean, that's people choose whatever profile picture they want on their Twitter feed, and I think every ambassador has had his picture taken with the Secretary General. In no way does it imply that the Secretary General supports every utterance of every ambassador in these United Nations.
That's not the light one. The light one has to do with the UN Office of Sports for Peace and Development, which I was looking up this weekend because of the Darvish, Uriel Guriel thing. But it tweeted that it went out of business in April, but its website continues in the present tense. And in September, it tweeted a promotion for a for-profit company, a leader in international sports marketing. So does this UN office continue a zombie-like
it no longer exists.
existence?
I'd have to see why who continues to control the Twitter account no longer exists. There is now there's a relationship between the United Nations and the International Olympic Committee that is being managed through the Department of Economic and Social Affairs.
Okay.
Madame.
Thank you, Stephane. You already mentioned that there would be a briefing on Syria, on the humanitarian situation in the afternoon. But we saw some media reports and pictures of starving children from eastern Ghouta over the weekend. Do you have any updates on that? And apparently some aid has reached into the town today.
I'd seen the reports of aid reaching. I don't have anything here. Hopefully, Mr. Lowcock will have more when he briefs you openly. Thank you all. We will go to my friend, Mr. Brendan Varma.